So when we're given a slope and a point, writing a linear equation can be really simple. We can use point slope form and we just plug in the slope and the point, or we can use slope intercept form where we're going to plug in the slope, plug in the point to solve for b. So here we have a slope of -2/3 and a point of -1, +4. So if I wanted to use my point slope form, I could be done in 2 seconds. Subtracting -1 turns into a plus. Done. Or if I would like to solve for b because I wanted it to be in slope intercept form, I can start with this, plug in my x and my y values, and then solve for b. On that one, my equation is going to be y equals -2/3 x plus 3 1/3. Using mixed numbers, even though I honestly hate them, but sometimes it's easy to see. We could also distribute this guy out to turn it into slope intercept form if you prefer. So you can always interchange between these pretty easily, whatever is easiest for you. Here we've got a line that has a slope of 2 and it goes through the point 0, 4. Now, if you can picture where that is on the graph, it's right here. It's on the y-axis. So this is my y-intercept already. And I can know that even without the graph because it happens at x equals 0. And the y-intercept is always going to happen when x equals 0. So this is a great one to use mx plus b. I have m, I have b, and I'm done. Nothing else to do. I can also use point slope form if I'd rather. It doesn't really matter. I'm still going to end up at this same equation. Now there's 2 slopes you don't want to forget about. A 0 slope, perfectly horizontal. These are always of the form y equals some number. And an undefined slope, these are always perfectly vertical. And they are always of the form x equals a number. So we know what x equals right now. Since it goes through -2, -3, x has to be -2. We can just be done. Or we can think about it on the graph if that makes more sense to you. Here's -2, -3-ish, just imagining. And then here's my line going through it perfectly up and down, and it would cross right here at -2. So my line is x equals -2. Now, when we're given a word problem, there are going to be specific words that are going to help you look for y-intercepts and slopes. The y-intercept happens one time, and it's also, since it's when x equals 0, it's often like a starting value. So if you see initial or starting value, if you see a fixed or flat price or fee, those are things that happen only one time. That's our y-intercept. For slope, that's our rate of change. So sometimes you will see the words rate or rate of change in there. You might see something that happens per every blah, 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 or for each blah, blah, blah. So those are helpful vocab words to look for when you are trying to interpret the sentences. So here's our first example. Lisa's selling handmade jewelry. The materials cost $60 and she sells each piece for $20. Write an equation to represent her profit, Y, in terms of how many pieces she makes, X. So the materials cost $60. That only happens one time, we're assuming, for this problem. And how does that affect her profit? This is a bit of a tricky problem. Since they cost $60, that's taking $60 out of her profit. So that's a -60. And then she's going to sell each piece for $20. So for every piece she makes, for every X, she's going to make $20 positive towards her profit. That's our equation. We're done. Is this reasonable for her jewelry business forever? No, she's going to have to buy more materials. It's all going to be different. But this is maybe an equation that represents a period of selling in her business. Next up, we have a phone plan that costs $30 per month. Per is an important word. And there's an additional charge of 10 cents per minute for calls. Write an equation to express the cost of the monthly bill C in terms of M minutes. So this is a bit confusing off the top because we have per 2 times. But let's focus back on what the question is asking us for. It's asking for the monthly bill. So since this $30 is per month, that really is only happening one time for this bill. So that's my one time thing. That's my y intercept. I have to pay that $30 per month, no matter how many minutes I am on the phone. So that is my y intercept. And then 10 cents per minute is what's making my bill different based on how much I use my phone. Someone who's only making a few phone calls a month versus someone that's on the phone for hours every night are going to have different phone bills based on this phone plan. A car rental company charges $100 plus $4 per mile. Write an equation for the cost y in terms of the number of miles x. Now, you may have noticed I put a nice pregnant pause in there, and that was for a reason, because you could have read this as a car rental company charges $100 plus $4 per mile. And then you might think that they charge $104 per mile. And that's just like way too expensive. So I'm assuming that this $100 is like a flat fee, like that's our one-time cost. And then the $4 per mile is our recurring cost. Okay. But if you had read that as 104 per mile, I would understand. Let's come back to the other way though. $100 is my one-time fee, and then I've got $4 for every mile X, and that's going to be my equation.